And hello, everybody, and welcome to F1 Failcast on a Friday feature. Ba-ba-bum. Slightly unusual time for us, but thank you for joining, whether it be live or on replay. This is Simon here, as always, and alongside me discussing the F1 and the F1 testing and everything else F1 this week is the mercurial Esther Ben. How are you doing?
Bono Estende, my friend. How are you? Let me bring my microphone closer. I feel like there's too much distance between us.
Oh,
there we go. How's that?
That is taco-licious.
How was your Friday, sir?
Really good, actually. Thank you. It's been interesting in the UK since we seem to be in the grip of a snowstorm, but it just seems to be snowing just enough to be inconvenient, but not actually look dramatic on any camera whatsoever. But apart from that, apart from the fact that I was so busy laughing that someone had made a giant snowcock, that I went to take a photo of it. I did. I was laughing at it so much that I went to take a photo of it and stacked it into the snowcock and took it down. So I have destroyed snow penis. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm sorry, we're like 30 seconds in and you've already dropped the line. I have destroyed snow penis. I've just opened my beer. I think that was a good thing. I am drinking and driving today, which I must say is not cool, no matter how cool I'm about to make it look. Watch me win from pole now. Yeah, it's been cold as balls here as well, actually. It was like -11 this morning. Which, you know, it's fine, but it wears off after a bit, doesn't it?
Yes. Not fun. And it seems to be the grip of Europe is trapped in that. It will be part of the topics that we'll be discussing today.
We have much to cover.
We do indeed. We're off to
Shall we dive in?
Yes, let's dive in.
I'm wearing the... that's why my camera's on today. I haven't cameraed in a while. I'm wearing the Sauber shirt. The one that took forever to arrive and cost £11 billion. It has arrived.
Can you give a review, or is it too early to tell?
Well, points in favour is that it hasn't fallen apart yet. Usually on these things, the print comes off really quickly. But I have to say, actually, I mean, while it's not worth what they charge for it, it actually... It looks pretty good. I'm not going to stand up because I'm lazy, but you have to take my word for it. It looks pretty good. It's quite well made for F1 merchandise. It's one of the better pieces I've had. Normally the Toro Rosso stuff's pretty good, but
yeah.
Their new stuff actually looks really good.
I was going to say,
I sent you a link to it the other day.
Yeah.
It's nice to see them coordinated with their cars at last.
Hurrah! Yes, because I like the Toro Rosso shade of blue. It is pretty gorge. I could stroke that for a while.
Oh shit! I was a bit slow off the mark there. So now Formula One management are going to ban my stream because I showed the rainbow thingy at the start.
Not good. Wet for quali, but dry for race.
Of course it is, because why wouldn't it be? Didn't even give myself a funny name.
Oh.
Right then. Well, first things first. Competition between us is still tight. I'm feeling good about Sepang. I actually quite like it as a track. Normally, I'm a bit sprightly here as well. And the best bit about it is that I'm going to have to work extra hard to bin it in qualifying, as I have done in like the last 5 sessions. because there's quite a lot of runoff, and the barrier is on the opposite side of the track to the one you're most likely to go off at. So
that is true.
I'm feeling good. Okay,
let's update the setup.
Right then.
I don't feel good about quali.
We'll dive straight into to some testing news then, no?
Yeah. Because since it's rainy out on this track, the main story was it was rainy and cold and freezing and snowing all the way through testing. Oh, you're in. I was inside you for a split second.
This is the first time in 8 years I've been allowed out of the garage before you. I'm taking it.
Cheeky.
Bye, losers.
That's because you've got a little pina colada on the side there.
I am actually a bit cheeky in the wet as well, so
yeah, you're better than
maybe they just thought he's just going to hold you up. Let's get you out early.
Yeah, you are better in the wet than me. But yeah, so currently there seems to be all of the media press banging on about whether or not they should have gone to Spain at all, because apparently the world did not foresee that a snowstorm would be hitting in the middle of March, or at the beginning of March, which I think is a bit harsh on Formula One in general. And Ted Kravitz stopped rubbing everyone's nose in it about going to Bahrain, which it now looks like they're doing.
I'm sorry, is Big Mouth Kravitz having a go here about... I mean, let's be fair to Formula One here. When you're planning a test in Barcelona and you're considering the risk factors for that trip and the implications of going there, I suspect most of the time snow is not particularly high on the list.
No, exactly.
Like, in terms of worries about hosting an event there, I have to say, I would probably consider snow to be about the last thing I'd put on there, alongside, I don't know, a chance of it raining haddock. It just seems ridiculous to beat up on them about it.
Oh, I know.
You know, if anything, it did give us some entertainment.
Yeah, there was some good photo opportunities that I think should have happened and gone amiss, but yeah.
I think Force India made the best of it.
Snow will be on the list
they
next
put some...
year. No.
I completely missed that.
Chimpy just said snow will be on the list for next year now, though.
I'd love to see a snow race. Force India fitted snow chains to their car's tyres. Did you see that picture?
Oh, no, I didn't.
They did. So, I mean, technically, it's you know, I mean, obviously it wouldn't work very well, but, you know, Pirelli have produced snow tyres before for Toro Rosso. Red Bull have also run their car on snow. I'd love to see a snow race.
Oh, yeah, because they done some demonstrations for Russia, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If I remember.
And
Yeah.
they put Max out in like an RB12 or something with snow tyres, and Sebastian Buemi did it a few years before with diamond studded tyres. I think that'd be fascinating to watch. I mean, we've tackled everything else now. We're doing night races. We're doing a night race in the rain now.
Yeah.
I think that's the next horizon until Elon Musk enables us to have a race on Mars. And I'd watch the balls out of that.
Yes.
Dig yourself out of that hole, Adrian Newey. How can you do aero with no air?
How to build a spaceship. Next book. So yeah, I was getting very annoyed because every day because I've been watching on F1 Interviews, the YouTube channel, they put up all of the paddock uncut stuff from Sky and all of the interviews, and all it is him and this miserable Scotsman that they've now got on board who makes Simon Lazenby look competent. Which is new lows, and they just all of their questions are. So you're not really running very much then? Should you have gone to Bahrain? Could you not tell that the snow was coming? And you can see like everyone going, are they really asking me these questions? But let's be politically correct and reply with, no, Ted, we didn't. So
Yeah, could you just fuck off, Ted?
yeah.
I don't know. I've been reading a lot of complaints about Ted's Notebook this season. I mean, not that we're even in the season yet. I've never watched it. I think I've seen glimpses of it on YouTube, you know, like segments, but it's not something I've religiously followed. But it's the first time I have to say
I
that
like the Scottish
on my social
guy.
media.
The Eric Biley interview was great.
Eric Boulier interview is great. No. No, so the issue that we have with Ted, and it's right, I thought that Ted was like universally quite liked, but it seems that his level of awkwardness and incompetence and real bias towards certain drivers are now starting to wind people up quite a bit. So hopefully he'll rein it in and at least try, because sometimes it makes comic gold when he's just being a complete and utter weirdo, but it now comes off as like slight rudeness of I can be awkward and get away with just making stupid comments because I'm Ted and I'm awkward. So he's got to walk that line. Oh, I'm nearly out of fuel.
I mean, he's been around the block a while now, and you know, roughly the same time scale as Jenny Gow, and you never see Jenny Gow make people react this way.
No.
Or Lee McKenzie.
No.
In fact, Lee McKenzie's actually one of my favourites to have behind the microphone when dealing with drivers, because I think she has a rapport with them that enables her to get comments when other people might fail. And I've never felt the same about Ted, and I don't know, he probably did himself no favours by being a pit lane reporter in the 90s, because there's nothing worse than, you know, you're trying to strategise or you're in the middle of setting the car up for qualifying, and then boom, Fat Ted's in there asking you questions.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I like how you call him Fat Ted as well. Anyway, I know that's not necessarily the big story to come out of testing, is that Ted Kravitz is incompetent, but
And a bit fat.
and a bit fat. But yeah, I just thought everyone's beating up over the fact that F1 had spent a week not doing very much, but I do think that it also highlights some of the stupidity that goes on, because last year they paid to try and soak an F1 track for an F1 wet day, and now it was done for them free of charge and no one took it up. And I'm always of this opinion. Gary Anderson was saying the same thing, that doesn't matter what the weather conditions are, if your car is out there you will learn something. So I feel like people have wasted money.
No, I completely agree. I was reading some technical analysis actually, and the consensus was, well, with the air temperature being so low and the track temperature being so low, because I mean, I don't know if you saw, but they were running intermediates and full wets on a dry track at one point because they couldn't get temperature into the slicks.
Oh,
you can. All you can really do in those circumstances is aero tests. And they said it in such a way as if that was a bad thing, and you think, well, you know, isn't aero testing something that teams used to spend millions and millions a season on, and now you've got an opportunity to get some? I just don't know why you wouldn't take that up. I mean, maybe there was a technical impediment with the temperature being so very low, because I know Autosport noticed Verstappen's car sounding dog rough coming out of the garage. Right, can I finally come in now? I've been meaning to come into the pits for like the last 2 laps. Only wanted to do 1 fast lap, but every time I've been going round, I've come out of it faster. So I feel like I have to get the time on the board, just so Hamilton.
You're 2.5 seconds ahead of Hamilton.
No.
Because I was like, why am I 4 seconds off of pole? And it's because you're 2.5 ahead of everyone else. Nice.
The wet weather king strikes again.
It is. It says that it's going to get light rain right at the end of Q1 though, so we might have to pop back out again at the end just to make sure.
I keep being caught out with that, you know, in this game. It likes to throw that curveball at you, and you go and you set a flyer and you think, yeah, I'm happy with that. And then the last 30 seconds, the track is suddenly like 5 seconds faster.
Yes, indeed. But if you was a team boss, would you not have your cars out there as much as possible to at least even embed parts and embed like
Fuels
new
that are
engines
used on
and stuff like
racing
that?
cars just don't like cold weather due to their mixture.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I mean that's completely true, right? Because even in ambient temperature, I know Formula One cars of the V8 and V10 era, I don't know if it applies to the hybrids, had to have the all the fluids in the engine, so you know your oil and your water and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything had to be pre-warmed, which always struck me as well, sort of one of those interesting dinner party facts more than anything. But maybe that is a factor, that the air temperature was so cold that even if you pre-warm the liquids you're putting into the engine, the way Verstappen's engine sounded, apparently, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the cold rather than the weather. But particularly teams that have made a huge technical shift this year, you know, Toro Rosso, McLaren, McLaren in particular, actually, more than anybody, you think they'd be out and not just sat in a gravel trap with 3 wheels. It just strikes me as a wasted opportunity.
Around the V10/8 cars.
Yeah, exactly. This it knows what's up.
It does. That's Simon,
I'm
by
glad
the
I
way,
didn't
who
dream
is
that
a
fact.
mechanic for racing, so that's his day job.
Oh, superb. It's good to have some expertise on hand, because we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
No, but we do it so well.
When it comes to the technical stuff. So I presume, you know, it sounds like that was the impediment. It is just a shame, though. I mean, plenty of people are actually buying testing tickets. It's the most affordable way to see an F1 car on track, even though a lot of the time you're just watching an empty track and there's not a lot going on. But for like the passionate hardcore fan who maybe can't afford to attend a race, you can still make a few days of it. And quite a few people on my Twitter I know made the trip. Lewis has closed the gap to 1.4 seconds, close enough. Do I go out again? Do I wait? I'm still seeing full wet for another 10 minutes.
Oh, cool. We'll be alright with wet.
Track temperature is stable too, so I don't think it's necessarily... the air temperature drops in 20, but I don't know if the game actually simulates that or just tells you. So yeah, I mean, I feel more bad for the people who attended. I mean, I just tried to follow the live timing that Autosport provides and pick up the insights from the technical experts they dot around. I always like Gary Anderson's input because I think he's got quite an accessible way of explaining things, and he will move around the track during the day and tell you what he observes in specific corners. Yeah. And I think that can give you a tantalising insight into what's going to develop in the season. And we'll touch on that as the podcast goes on, actually, because we don't want to, drop the big guns early. But there's quite a lot of hot topics to talk about. But there are some who made good use of the snow. We've already touched on Force India putting tyres, chains on their tyres, but did you also see that they'd fit a snowplow to the front wing for a photo opportunity? Yeah, they must have been bored with nothing to do. I guess some of the mechanics must have sort of bashed together a pink snowplow looking thing. I don't know what they made it of. And they mounted it where the front wing would normally sit, and then rolled the car out of the garage and got some photos. And I think that's if you can't run the car, that's the sort of thing you should be doing. I believe Toro Rosso also did a Q&A with Pierre Gasly. Get your drivers doing something. If you can't get anything from the engineering side out of being there, you're paying all those staff. Do something. Just do something. Yeah. Particularly because I imagine that with the F1 streaming service that we're going to touch on in a little bit, testing might become a more involved affair for the fans, and you might actually have people on the scene getting insight from within the teams. I imagine they'll want to make something of that event, and people are following testing quite closely, and that's why so many media outlets have staff there all day for every session. I think it's important that they recognise that they still have an obligation to the fans, even if they can't fulfil their obligations to the engineering side of their business. One good thing about Liberty taking over is that they seem to share that. They seem to share that view, and I think they'll probably encourage teams to be a bit more proactive with their engagement during quiet periods. I mean, it's nothing, just send one of your drivers out onto the track and throw some t-shirts over the barrier. People are sat there freezing just to catch a glimpse of what you've produced. I think it's common courtesy to give them a little bit of your time. Yeah,
no, I agree. Or at least, like, I don't know, plant a crying child in the crowd, something like
that. Well, without further ado, shall we get into performance and whatnot, particularly with day one, which I thought was very interesting. Day one kind of knocked my socks off a little bit, not least because quite a few of our predictions were accurate.
Yeah.
I was actually spooked again by...
is that they are sorted out by the teams more than the FIA. All the FIA do is make sure they don't do over their 8 allowed days.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. But also, I guess it's probably quite difficult for them to force teams to send their cars out of the garage, because I mean, every lap that car's running, it's costing a team money. And I mean, I imagine that there's sort of, particularly for smaller teams with a tighter budget, I'm thinking Force India particularly here, because we know they have the smallest budget, that when you're running that car, you're going to make sure that there's value to running that car, and you're not going to run it, I suppose, just to have the car out there. It's a shame, and you can probably tell from my roundabout way of talking about it that there's kind of like I have a conflicted feeling about it, because particularly the smaller teams I have a lot of affection for, and I don't want to see them struggle for money. And I don't want to put any extra pressure on them. They were already talking during testing, actually, Force India, that this season was for them significantly more expensive because they weren't planning on producing entirely new chassis, but they had to because of the Halo device.
Yeah.
So I imagine they might have one eye on the pocketbook. I mean, I'm sure what you save in wear and tear and testing probably doesn't amount to very much, but it all adds up.
Yeah, agreed.
But anyway, day one. Let's tackle for me the best thing about that first day of testing, which is
I expect
Toro
they will
Rosso.
go to Bahrain next year. They only went to Spain as it was cheaper.
I still think that will make the deciding factor, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think you'll have a hard time convincing teams to give
I
consent.
expect it's turned out more expensive with the last days.
Maybe.
Well, you probably got less value for your investment. I'd agree with you there.
I still think they'll go to Barcelona just because it's convenient and it's historical, and you can. I know they've done the tarmac and stuff, but it's just it's the done thing. And until they can get because will everyone else want to travel out to Bahrain? And if you go to Bahrain, do people cover things more because we're so Eurocentric? I think there's quite a lot of different layers on that one. So yeah, we'll see. But anyway, day one.
Yeah, day one. Oh, almost lost it there, Chief.
Really?
Just before I get into day one, actually, I just want to add that so far another prediction is coming true. That is, I would be drinking and driving live on stream, and I was at 1.4 seconds up. So
Sorted.
yeah, it is cool, isn't it? Let's just be honest. So day one, Toro Rosso blew me away.
Yeah.
Now, I had predicted that they wouldn't be the least reliable team, but to jointly share most reliable and to put the most laps on the board, or almost the most laps on the board, you know, for a while they were top of the pile, that just is staggering to me. And I often said on this cast that I don't lay the blame for the McLaren-Honda debacle entirely at the door of Honda. But it is interesting that Toro Rosso have taken a more hands-off approach with Honda, and they've spoken to the press recently about it, and what they've said is we have to give them leeway on the proviso that you deliver something that works. And what's come out of all this discussion, and it's very believable to me, is that for the last few seasons, Honda had been wanting to change the dimensions of the power unit for reasons of performance and reliability.
Right.
And McLaren had been very reluctant to let them do so because they wanted particularly tight packaging around the rear of the car. And I don't know if this is substantiated or not. It has come from either Honda or Toro Rosso, but the source in the article I read wasn't named, and you never know if this is just speculatory, but it seems that the Toro Rosso Honda unit is an evolution of last year's, but it's been elongated by a few centimetres.
Right.
And look at the difference it's made. And I can believe that story. I mean, it could be complete bullshit, but I can believe it just because that's always been the way McLaren has worked. They've always been prepared to throw their weight around and the weight of their reputation to get what they want from their partners. And Toro Rosso, this is their first works deal. They don't really have high expectations or targets, and really this season is to enable a situation where Red Bull can, with some level of confidence and comfort, move on to being a Honda-powered team as well, because we know Renault pretty much wants shot of them. It may already be the case that the deal has been terminated for next year. There's conflicting reports on that as well. Hartley in particular impressed me during the course of the test just for his stamina. The guy just kept going. I also found myself liking the look of the car again, which famously last year I loved it for the first Grand Prix and afterwards began to slowly about it.
I like the change to the brighter blue colour. It just makes it brighter and less.
I know exactly what you mean, even though that was just a noise. But what did you make of that? Were you keenly and happily watching the Toro Rosso pound round?
Yeah, even though, I mean, we know that they're not going to be El Matador and fastest on the timing beams and everything, but it was nice to see that the car seemed reliable, consistent enough. I didn't hear too much I didn't hear any complaints, but I didn't hear anyone specifically talk about how the Honda drives as well, because it was the drivability that was always a problem as well as the actual power. But if they're able to actually make the changes and just kind of not be at loggerheads with each other and have a much more easier approach of things with the pressure off, then it seems to be bearing its fruit, and that's quite nice. And it makes me slightly less worried for Toro Rosso coming into 2018, because I was very, very, very worried that if history repeated itself, that they would be bottom of the pile. And it seemed to be the consensus from various different reports that I was reading was that actually a lot of people also thought that, but coming away from that test after the first couple of days, people were like, maybe not. I think what the issue for Toro Rosso will be is that they need to strike whilst the iron's hot if they've got that reliability and cohesion in the team early on, because traditionally they always score better in the first half of the year than the second half, because they don't have that ability to keep things going. And if everyone else is still okay and running reliably, they're not going to be able to pick up those points where everyone else is having like a haphazard disaster fest. So yeah, it's encouraging that Hartley is consistent and able to do the long laps as well. I'll be interested to see what Gasly does in the car, because he was very, very all over the shot in the last couple of races. Both of them were a little bit, because they were struggling with track time and also with tyre temperatures and things like that, and that's the one thing they couldn't deal with in Spain, was it? So hopefully they'll be able to get a little bit more of that done when it's above 0 degrees next week, and then that will kind of make me go, yeah, Toro Rosso's on track.
Well, I think they've come at it very sensibly. First of all, allowing Honda to tell them how to build an engine, I think, is smart, rather than telling Honda how to build the engine.
Yeah.
But also they have been giving the staff cultural training, because obviously working with a Japanese company with the language barrier and the cultural barrier can actually be particularly difficult. And I think you saw into that a little bit in the McLaren documentary, on Amazon. I think that showed through just a little.
Pass me the piece of paper. I have the paper. Pass me the paper. I have paper. No, just pass me the paper.
Can I just take that, wrestling it out of his hand?
No.
Tickled me that.
Yeah. That's my favourite bit.
Yeah, mine too. It was definitely my favourite part. It was like he was trying to negotiate with a murderer holding a knife. I've just ruined my lap, but it's okay, because I'm coming in, because I think we might be moving into intermediate tyre territory.
We are, because I'm already out. Well, I went out on them against F1 Games advice, and I'm fourth.
No, I can tell, because the car's starting to feel really crappy, and I've been smooth within a level of tolerance thus far, but I almost lost it a few turns ago. So I think it is tyre change o'clock. Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were consistent, that didn't seem to have any reliability problems, and aside from the speed trap figures, which I found fascinating, because Honda were surprisingly high in the speed traps, what I found particularly good, and it has been my moment of testing thus far, was the McLaren Honda of Fernando Alonso not having, seeming at least, we don't know the full story, seemingly not having the pace to get past Hartley's Toro Rosso, and having to cut the chicane to get round him, in the process invalidating his lap time.
Oh, superb.
That Autosport reported on that, and it sounded like from the guys that were on the scene that he just couldn't seem to get past. So he had to cut the corner. That tickled me a little bit. And again, it's not because I want McLaren to fail. I really don't. It's just as I said in the last episode, they've built it up too much again, and I don't know if they can deliver on it in a way that's convincing. Whereas Toro Rosso have done the right thing, which is promise nothing, stay very quiet over the winter, and then just confidently and quietly wheel the car out, and it works. I don't think they could have dreamed of a better start.
No.
And I know testing pace and testing performance doesn't translate to qualifying in Melbourne or anything, but the indicators are very good. That doesn't mean they're going to be, top 5 or whatever. It's more a reflection that they're arguably not really going to go backwards, or if they do, it won't be very much. The super time information shows that maybe they've lost a tenth, but again, you can't read into super times from testing too much either, because everyone's running a variable program. Although, interestingly, and we should move on a team. We'll cover the other days going forward. I do want to touch on Renault though, because their super time information was fascinating.
Yes.
They, aside from having, in my humble opinion, the best looking car on the grid, they have rather convincingly, in my book, shown flashes of pace here and there that I didn't dare expect from them, and it shows in the super time data, which indicates they've gained 1.1 seconds.
Oh wow.
Which obviously, again, testing numbers, so it probably isn't to that scale, but that is by, I believe, 0.5 of a second, the largest gain in super time, year on year, reflective of testing pace.
Sure.
And that made me very happy, because Sainz and Hulkenberg in a car that can be at the sharp end.
Yes. Want now.
I find that very, very tantalising. I'm very excited by that prospect.
My tip is wet. That is good, actually. No, and they have been my surprise, hurry-ha from the whole of testing so far, because I was kind of a bit dubious almost at their chances, because you hear all of this thing of Renault's gone for reliability over performance because it's 3 engines this year, not 4. And then you kind of think, oh, well, they're already saying in the press, oh, well, we might actually not even be the fastest Renault team. We might be the slowest one, actually, this year. But long term, we'll be fine. So they've kind of Toro Rosso'd it with the whole downgrade of expectation. And actually, I think they might well end up quite nicely top trumping McLaren at least. I don't know, not necessarily Red Bull, but they could be very well on the coattails of them if they keep going.
I'm finding that area of the grid very hard to call, actually, and testing has not helped.
No.
It really hasn't helped, because also, you're getting very mixed results from Alfa Romeo Sauber, and I don't think we've seen their full potential yet in testing. I get a feeling they're not necessarily sandbagging, but their test program seems to have a different focus. And even then, they're not always bottom of the timing board. And again, I hate talking about timing boards in testing because it literally means nothing. But you can't help but try and draw something from it. I mean, I have to say, and it's a good thing. It's not, it's not a complaint. It just makes doing this a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really struggling this year to read what's going on, because nothing in this first test has given me any cause to believe that the Mercedes dominance... oh, look at you! We've got a proper shoot-off now. Nothing I've seen in testing so far completely removes the notion from my mind that maybe Mercedes aren't going to have it so easy this year.
No, and especially if they continue to have little gremlins popping in and out everywhere. I did giggle at today or yesterday's little jibe from Hamilton going, well, I sacrificed my time in the car so that the team gets a better result, or always giving it the big I am. So if he has poor performance in Australia, then he can go, well, I've not had as much time in the car because I was working for the team, you know what I mean? We give some, we lose some. So I can already see media-wise how that would all play out. And if they continue to have a bit of a diva of a car, Ferrari's car looks it looks bald, but it does look nice and it looks quick. I think everyone will sandwich back up again, which is interesting because actually with the Halo, it's almost like a new formula again, I think, because of the way the centre of gravity changes and the whole aerodynamics, as you was alluding to with the Force India thing, having to build a new chassis.
Yeah.
And normally that spreads out a field, doesn't it? But this time, for the first time I can think of in a big reg or aero change in ages, actually, it's might have closed it up again, or at least bunched it into proper globules of bunches.
Yeah, I mean, we can only hope, right? But the early indications are very encouraging. I was following very keenly Gary Anderson's insight on this, and he had some very interesting feedback actually from watching the cars in the corners. And what he was saying was, that the Mercedes and the Toro Rosso in particular seem to wash out at the front. And that means they're putting the power down a little bit later, and the car just doesn't look as stable through the corners, which is a little surprising. But we know Mercedes had a bit of that in testing last year.
That would also put more context on the we can't follow other cars and overtake, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Hello from Sicily. Hello. Thank you for watching. It's just interesting to me that they had those engine bugs on the filming day. They seem to have these aero wash problems, and the fact it's been replicated on Toro Rosso is particularly interesting because, as you recall, with last year's car, they famously seem to follow the same school of thought on their aero. So it does correlate with that. That they will both be suffering this problem. However, the Ferrari, the Renault, and the Red Bull, and the McLaren were all noted for looking very good in the corners. It seems again that the McLaren chassis looks very, very good in the corners. But I sort of, again, I those Renault teams, I can't for the life of me put them in any order.
No.
I'm starting to have this sort of gut instinct that by some twist McLaren might end up bottom of that pile. But I could also believe I was proven wrong. I could see them surprising me. It's very, very odd to have three teams sharing a power unit and to seemingly be so tightly knit with each other. I pulled that time out of my arse. Didn't even have to stand up.
You did good.
Sorry, pulled it out of my arse. I've got to remember to do the puns or else this whole show unravels.
Nicely done, nicely done.
I could be on for my first poll here.
I think you will be.
I still haven't had poll.
Did you not get
And
poll
it's just
last
typical.
time?
No.
Oh no, you crashed out, didn't you?
I crashed out in qualifying. That's become my new signature. It's the Ben special.
Yeah.
And again, like we said, not supposed to drink and drive. I'm drinking and driving, and I put it top by the best part of a second.
Alcohol increases the ability.
We're sending some very dangerous messages to the youth
We
of
are.
tomorrow.
Don't do this, kids.
Is the
hit
rain
your
going to
mother.
stop?
No.
Apparently, actually, it is.
Oh, it is.
10 minutes.
Oh, right. Well, I'll do an inters just in case.
Yeah, I'm going to put a banker in. So yeah, I mean, Renault's another team that's been kind of I'm very excited to see what they can wheel out for us. I I won't move on to McLaren just yet. Why don't we talk a little bit about two teams that for me have been very anonymous throughout this test,
Yeah.
which would be Williams and
Yes.
Force India. Force India had some disrupted running because the car ended up in the gravel, courtesy of a driver whose name I can't remember. He's that forgettable. So we'll just call him Captain Gravel. Captain Gravel went out and he did a lap or two. And
Is this their usual test driver, not George Russell, the other one?
Yeah, the other one. Let's just call him Captain Gravel because I'm used to it
I like
now,
that.
and I think it's good. It's got a ring to it. Captain Gravel took the car out, put it in the gravel early on, as one might suspect from the name, and the car just didn't come out again for considerable time. And the commentators had a conflicting view on it because Gary Anderson was saying, well, once a car's in the gravel, it actually does surprising amount of damage to the floor of the car. Other people were saying, well, you just clean it up as best you can and get the car back out again. I was a little disappointed to see them not make the most of the test time available again. But I'm sure they had a good reason. What I did like, though, was that this gave me a chance to see some pictures of that car from a new angle. And we were talking last week about the Haas barge boards looking a little odd. Force India have taken their Stegosaurus concept and extended it along the bottom edge of the car.
Oh, yes, I've seen this.
Which I hadn't noticed. And I thought, when was the last time that we had so many different concepts in one formula? Because McLaren have sort of connected their barge boards to the side of the nose with like a strut that forms an aerodynamic wing. I've never seen so much variation in the aero for a long time. I mean, the last one that really burns in my mind was the walrus nose on the Williams.
Yeah.
Back in the 2000s. That was the last time I remember seeing a car that looked remarkably different from those around it. I mean, they've all got their own touches and styling details and so on. But
what about the weird Lotus nose in 2014?
Yeah, the double dildo Lotus nose that was wonky for some reason.
Yeah,
I still think that was some sort of oversight. I know someone's a lot smarter than me came up with that design, but I can't help but get the feeling that the state that team was in at the time, someone could have just pushed it off a coffee table and broken the end off one of the prongs, and just put it back and pretended they'd not touched it, and then just send it off for fabrication.
Pastor has snapped the other bit off anyway.
I mean, that car was it was a dog. And they really did stick with that concept for most of the season, didn't they? And then they went back to a conventional nose later on. Mm-hmm. What's interesting, actually, about that is that's the second experimental nose that's just completely failed, because the Williams Walrus nose turned out to be a sack of crap as well, if you recall.
Yeah. I remember looking at that Walrus nose and thinking that does not look aerodynamically efficient in the slightest compared to anything else. It just looks wrong.
It didn't, but I'll be honest, I actually really liked how it looked.
Yeah, it looked nice enough, but I was still like, what you doing?
I just ruined Bottas's day.
Excellent.
He went pole, and I'm about a microsecond behind him, and snatched it off him. Promise, I can't seem to get past him. Will you piss off, you finished...
Bottas!
You can tell that we played this game on realistic, though, because he's got so much more engine power than we do, that even though I'm faster in the corners, I have to take this really crappy line that costs me a lot of time because he won't shift out of my way, and these cars are so fat.
Yeah.
That it's just a massive accident going to happen.
Yeah. But yeah,
which again is kind of a trademark.
I've seen that picture. I remember seeing it on when they launched in the pit lane. Someone was talking about it back there, and I was like, "Ooh, that does look quite funky and quite aggressive." as does the Williams, actually, to be fair. So I find it quite interesting that the two teams that have kind of gone the most under the radar are the teams with the most angry elf-looking cars of the lot.
They
or
do look
angry
very
designs.
aggressive. They do look very aggressive, and I have to say, the
yeah.
Force India I think is a fantastic looking car.
Oh yeah, I really like the new livery. I was telling their social media man about it over day when he was posting pictures of him in front of it, adorning it beautifully. But yeah, it was. I don't know where to rank them, and I'm assuming that because it's a new chassis and it's a continuation still kind of where they are before, that they're not going to go like way back. But at the same time, I'm still like, but where are you going to end up? Because of Mercedes, Renault and McLaren coming forward, and that brings into this whole, well, what is the bottom end of this point scoring positions going to look like? And that is the beauty of, I think, 2018 for me.
Yeah, I'm finding them very hard to place, but I can't help but get the feeling that they've gone backwards, which makes me very sad. Because that's a team that has continued to defy expectations for the last sort of 3-4 seasons, and they've got an excellent driver lineup. They've got the best power unit in the field, and they've consistently delivered development to a good base car that has blown me away. And I would be very sad to see that start to unravel. I mean, we know it does because Formula One is cyclical like that.
Yeah.
Oh no, the clock is red, and I have lost pole to Sebastian Vettel because Bottas held me up. Do I try on slicks, or am I going to completely destroy my car in a wall?
Well, Jeff has just said slicks coming soon, but it is still actually spitting with rain. So I'm on my way in to decide.
He started telling me in full heavy rain to change to slicks.
Yeah,
so you can't trust that. Jeff, he's an arsehole.
I can't say anything about Force India. They had their problems on day one and they have not really ran since then.
No, I mean, like I said, they've been so anonymous. It's very, very odd. Williams too, though. I can't place them.
No, I feel like they aren't running to their full potential, and my worry there was that on the day where they had the most running, Sorokin only got a few laps in before the rain came, so that was kind of that. Stroll, I still can't decide what I feel. What do I feel about this man? It's like a relationship where you've had a row, but then they've also bought you some chocolates, and you're like, confused. They're all going out on dries.
Then I'm going to do the same thing.
So I'm kind of a bit like, where do Williams sit in the pile? I still think that the car looks really aggressive and very interesting. I think we'll see much more of them.
Anyone. Different teams topping each day, and McLaren constantly doing hypersoft running.
Yes, there's that as well. Miss Hypersoft team. But yeah, the thing for me for Williams is if it's a completely new concept car and they need to test out exactly what works and what doesn't work, this is probably the worst time for them ever, because actually they really need to get out there and show what they can or can't do now and learn.
I've got Verstappen and some other arsehole up ahead of me. I'm gonna back off.
Oh, hurry up!
Away.
Why are they being so leisurely taking off the tyre blankets? Go! I'm gonna be right bang on the. Oh no, I should be alright.
Oh, you're gonna do an Alonso at Silverstone?
A little bit. I'm gonna be bang on the thing.
How are my tyre temperatures? They can't be good because I'm driving really slowly. Go away, Verstappen. You're supposed to be fast. You keep talking about it. Piss off.
What do you make of...
I agree with what you're saying, because if I had to pick a team that I think is sandbagging, I would point to Williams immediately.
Yes.
I don't know why, it seems counterproductive, but if I had to guess at a team that...
TV graphics?
Yeah, we'll be coming to those in a little bit.
Yeah, they are on the agenda.
Yes.
Whereas if I had to point to a team that I think was trying to overemphasize their performance, a team with performance anxiety, if you will, sexual reference, would be McLaren. Because, like you say, they're constantly running the Hypersoft tyres. No other team seems to touch them. And I can't tell if they're trying to get... we were talking last week about their new strategy of just grabbing every quick win they can, because a quick win is still a win.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems odd to me that they would spend so much time running on the Hypersoft. Still not top the timetables quite often, but...
no.
It's not like the Hypersoft is going to be...
30 seconds left in the session.
It's going to be heavily in use throughout the season. I believe there's very few tracks it's actually going to be an option.
No.
Because, Ultrasoft was barely used either.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really tell what they're trying to do. I don't think it started well when Alonso's wheel fell off. And then, was it the second day Stoffel Van Dorn's car caught fire? It did. It really did. There was something to do with the wiring in the car, and the bodywork caught fire.
Oh, okay.
And they released a statement to Autosport, actually, and probably the wider media as well, that was headlined... McLaren reports £2 failure, and what they were saying is that for the sake of a £2 part, or it was the £2 part that failed, the car caught fire. And I was thinking, at what point when you were drafting this press release did you think that'll make us look good?
Yeah.
the elastic bands that we used to tie the wires together, they're shit. I mean, if you can't get the basics right, just shut up. Really?
But that goes back to your point, isn't it? Though over McLaren, that kind of level of detail would just not be something that would happen under Ron age.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Japanese boy. And that kind of attention to detail is what is missing from making your ex-championship winning team become a championship winning team again.
Yeah, it is. I think they're missing Big Ron, and I don't think they were expecting to. I've not got Paul. I fluffed my last fast lap.
Oh, I don't know where I was.
washed off a lot of speed in the fast left-right section.
Oh, I was 6th.
It's still close between us this year. It's very close. I think this is the closest we've ever been.
It is. I don't have a set... For some reason, I don't have a setup specific for this track, and I always go for one of the default ones here. But I don't know why, and so I must actually work on a Malaysian setup properly when I do career mode for this.
It's so important in these versions of the game. I think you get away with default setups up until about F1 2012, but from then on, or particularly 14 actually. 14 was when they reworked the physics, right?
Yeah.
And now you just have to have a proper setup on the car, or else you are way off the pace. Right. What we're going to do in the race. I hope the weather's not going to be mental.
Nice and dry.
Race strategy. I love that the game is in... It's in the habit of giving you one sort of meh kind of strategy and another one that is completely ludicrous.
Yes.
So what I've got here is, well, would you like to make it a 2-stop race, or you can make it a 3-stop race for no appreciable gain, and that will be 15.1 seconds slower across race distance. And it's like, well, why? But what I am going to do is make sure I'm not on the slower tyre at the end of the race, because that would be dumb, and I don't know why it suggests it. Does that work? Where's my lowest projected race time? There we go. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'll be slow in the middle stint, but I think that's okay.
Cool.
What are you doing with yours?
I am softing, then 2 super softings. So I'm not
you're going long at the start.
Yeah. I think I'm going to get caught up in traffic because I'm not so good round here.
I'm expecting a massive accident. I'm pretty sure
Power unit cycle, so let's
because
straight on
this car gets monstered off the line. It just strikes me that coming into turn 1, I'm going to be completely mobbed by the cars behind, and then it's really difficult to get through without losing something.
Yes.
Maybe I'll do an Alonso. I'll just take a super wide line and hope everyone stays away.
Keep away. Get your crucifix up. Yes, if it's your first time watching, because we've got a slightly higher view count than usual, we normally vaguely have to concentrate around the first lap or so to make sure we don't smash into each other. Then afterwards, we'll return back to the F1.
Yeah, it is first and foremost a podcast. We just happen to be playing a video game at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that a lot of people, when they come for the first time, get confused about. It's like, are you playing the game or doing the podcast? I'd say it's arguable that we're doing either.
Yeah.
Quite frequently.
We're managing to half-arse boast at the same time. But yeah.
Do you know, actually, I was talking to someone I work with not long ago about this exact thing, because they were asking me about what it is that we do, and I was telling them about it, and I said, the interesting thing is that we're the only ones I'm aware of who play the game live while live casting about Formula One news.
It's a skill.
And they said to me, there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah, there probably is.
He's got a fair point, right? Because you only have to look at the Monaco episodes to see how difficult it is to concentrate on producing a drive worth doing and a conversation that flows.
I'm just grateful that people already know with my channel that no one comes here for good gameplay. They just come here to watch me play things mediocrely and reminisce about childhood dreams.
No. What was it we were described as on IMDb? The pork scratchings of F1 News and Opinion. I still think that's the best. It's just bad for you.
And we still don't know who actually gave us that description,
No.
but we love and appreciate them all the same.
Oh, I've got a Ferrari behind me and I've got a Simon behind me.
Ouch. To be fair, there are some men in their lives that quite enjoy that. But I've not found one for a while.
Gay reference.
Sausage.
Do you know what I'm thinking?
Run.
That this is going to turn into... Do you remember at Suzuka in 2014?
Oh, yeah.
Where we were side by side all the way down the straight just screaming into the microphone. Yeah, that's going to happen. Look how much faster you are off the line than me. On the slower tyre, no less.
Oh, no.
You might have me here.
It's race time.
Oh, you're gonna... Oh, Massa, you devil. Massa's come from 16th to 7th. Down the
That
inside.
cheeky monkey. You're not alongside me, are you? Because if you are, I'm going to turn and take your
No,
nose
I collected
complete bastard.
Verstappen into the pit lane wall.
off. Is he out?
No.
We can only hope. Oh, almost lost it there. Oh, this is bum tightening stuff. I'll be honest. If I stood up now, the chair would come with me.
So the ambulance is in preparation for you then.
Yeah. I was going to say, every time we do a stream, it's just constant array of ambulances, either on the first lap, the last lap, or when you're doing the introduction.
Yes. It's like
I'm
they
not
know.
in prison, by the way.
Oh.
Oh, to be fair, I would say that if I was. Right, we're almost through the first lap, so that's traditionally the time that we try and get back onto some semblance of topic.
Yes.
Did you know
I have a
you
side
guys
note
have a
before we do,
big
though.
bag?
I completely missed that again.
That's alright. I couldn't hear it myself. Bear with me a second.
Your robot gerbil that reads out your messages does a really bizarre job.
Oh, people saying they didn't know we had an IMDb page. We are that famous because we've been running that long.
What, 8 years now? 9?
Yeah.
8?
Yeah.
Which means, actually, that you and I have been friends for 10 years.
Yes, because we started in GPV or GPO, or no, it's FSR.
FSR. FSR in 2010.
2009.
2008, sorry.
2008,
yeah,
2009, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we should mark the occasion at some point. Although every time we should mark some form of occasion, we never do. We still haven't done the Christmas special, and we're already in March.
I know.
Sorry, got that wrong. It's the non-denominational holiday special. No, that wasn't it either. It's a non-denominational extravaganza. I don't know. The marketing has gone to shit. I'm losing a lot of time here because Raikkonen scares me. He's become the new master for me. Yeah. He's got to be gone this year, hasn't he?
Oh please, I've had enough.
I still love you, Kimi. I do, but he's got to be gone. He's the granddad of the grid for one thing, but he's not even using half his arse now.
No.
He went karting during testing the other day. Did you see that?
I think I did actually. Did he Instagram it and just put like the word karting underneath?
Yeah. You have to love Kimi. It's just that he's lost it a little bit. Well, he's lost it a lot actually. Well, actually, since he came back with Lotus, we discussed last week. It's questionable if he even had it in the first place.
Hi there.
Yeah. Hello, Cygnus Very. Don't know you. Welcome to the stream.
Greetings. Anyway,
yeah.
Back to testing. We're supposed to be talking testing, and we do this every time.
Barcelona.
Exactly. Yeah. No. So we agree Williams sandbagging, but also Williams probably one of the teams that are most hurt by the fact of that weather is terrible because it's a complete new design for them, a new design philosophy, and they need to test it out. Who haven't we talked about testing wise, including the team that we are currently in?
I tell you what, we should do Haas next, but a final word on Williams.
Be there in days 3 and 4.
Oh, I think we've got a chat going on amongst other people. Don't worry, continue on.
And please do keep chatting, by the way. It's not a problem. The thing about Williams is it's a new concept on the car, which we talked about at length in the last episode, so I won't retread old ground. But the car does look aggressive, and I was proud of them for taking a step they'd been a little bit too scared to take in recent years. But they've lost the consistency in the platform of the car. They've lost consistency in terms of drivers because the only consistent element they've got in the cockpit is Lance Stroll, which is a bit like going to a patisserie and someone giving you a chocolate eclair that's filled with dog shit. So I don't know how they can realistically measure the new concept because I agree. I know Kubica's a great development driver, but he's been out of the sport for so long, and there's so many question marks over his ability and the relevance of his feedback to this formula.
Yeah,
I really don't know.
I agree, and like Stroll is Mr. Inconsistency, and so you can't base consistency on a Mr. Inconsistent person. The issue that they've also got with Kubica is he's not relevant in terms of what Williams have had previously in 2017, 2016, so on and so forth. He's not got that historical background that they need. I almost feel like they need to... You'll kill me for the first half of the sentence. The second half may make more sense. Bring Massa back as a kind of driver coachy development type thing so that they have that level of consistency, because at the minute they're basing themselves... They do need to go for a fresh approach, and if Stroll and Sirotkin to a lesser degree are more long-term commitments, Perez, you moose, then that's fine. But they still need to kind of work out what is relevant and where they're going as a team.
No, I agree. I think I might turn my engine up and see if I can't get past some of these guys. I think I can beat them in the pits, to be honest.
India went out to the gravel on turn 5 yesterday.
They was in the gravel again?
Needs to be out of F1 completely.
Was this Captain Gravel?
Yeah, who was that? Signuvez. Sorry, I'm going to butcher your name every time because I'm quickly glancing down.
It happened 10 meters in front of me.
Oh, well, you was there.
Oh, fantastic! We've got eyes on the ground now. It's almost like we're a proper podcast.
I know.
Can you tell us though who was it that put it in the gravel? There's a delay on your chat.
Yeah, there will be a little bit of a delay going through, but yeah, we'll be interested to know if that was.
No, it wasn't caught. It managed to get out.
Ah, okay.
Ian Fran BTW.
I wonder if is it Al Sellers Jr. is their driver, isn't it? The test one.
No, it's not him. It's like, is it Nicholas Latifi?
Oh, Latifi. I didn't realise that was him in the car already.
Yeah, but please, Captain Gravel.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm curious if it was him that was behind the wheel, because I know he was supposed to get 2 stints in the car, because the Force India were one of the teams utilising their actual race drivers the least in the first test, and I believe the second test is all Checo and Ocon. I keep getting really close to Raikkonen.
Oh, a Russian guy.
I keep getting really close to Raikkonen and then washing out in the corners, because I keep forgetting that the game actually does quite a good job of simulating following a car closely.
I couldn't see the helmets with the halos.
Oh, well, there's an issue for the crowds, isn't it? Can't see the.
You mean
helmets.
You couldn't see Esteban Ocon's great big pink helmet? God damn, they write themselves. But no, I was hearing this a lot actually. As I was saying, a few people on my Twitter were also in Barcelona for testing, and that was one of the biggest complaints about the Halo actually. And Jolien, Hello Darkness, my old friend Palmer, was on the BBC podcast.
Oh, it wasn't pink, I believe.
Okay.
And he was saying the same thing, that he thinks it's kind of, it takes something away from the character of open wheel racing, but also it's also you can't.
Sorry. Hi, Fran.
Hi, Fran. I don't know you, but hi. It's sort of common feedback that you can no longer see the driver working in the car either.
Yeah, no, it doesn't it doesn't surprise me. I wonder if they're gonna, because I know that they've gone, and because remember beforehand they were talking about. Was it Force India or McLaren? I can't remember which team it was when they didn't have the driver name badges on the side for the unique identifiers. That was Force India, wasn't it? And they started getting a bit pissy over it. The FIA.
Well, they stood their ground, because I have to say their integration of that information, like driver number and name, is the ugliest solution on the grid in 2017.
It was, but I wonder. The Halo potentially is actually quite a good sponsorship opportunity to stick a good sponsor on there, but I wonder if they need to put some kind of driver personalisation on there. Oh, thank you, Tom Gamer 123. Thank you for subscribing. Glad we entertain you vaguely.
It strikes me that we're probably not far away from a situation where you have a GoPro type solution mounted somewhere on the driver or within the Halo structure.
Yeah. Well, did you see the on the F1 channel where they done a lap one board with Hulkenberg with the Halo? Oh,
yes, I
did. You sent it to me, didn't you?
I keep nearly binning it. I'm starting to struggle now. I don't know if my tyres have gone off.
My car is very tail happy.
The Honda sounds wrong. They lift throttle. Ferrari engines sound like something kicks in when they slam the throttle pedal.
I had actually heard that. I hadn't heard much about the Ferrari engine, but I heard the Honda on the Toro Rosso filming footage, and I have to say it sounds so much better than the canal barge that McLaren had. The noises that came out of that engine were unholy at times.
Yeah.
Just shameful. No, but we got derailed again, didn't we? We were going to move on to Haas, and our prediction was that Haas would be metronomic if unspectacular, and I think they kind of held true to that. Because, again, I think actually they've vindicated me in my assumption that they've probably gone backwards year on year.
Yep.
And I'm trying not to be too critical of them for that, because they've got a unique set of circumstances. But I can't see how they could have gone forward, and testing has done nothing to to lift me of that opinion.
I'm
They've
more
just been
pessimistic.
unspectacular.
Honestly, it sounds the same as the last time I saw testing in 2015.
Really? I mean, because I only heard a snippet of it, so it's interesting to get a different point of view on this from someone who's actually trackside and hearing it go past. I would have assumed that it would sound different. I would have assumed it would have sounded different simply because of the modifications that Honda have made to it.
Interesting.
I don't think I'm fast enough to get past 3 cars in one move. And I don't know if I should pit early and get into some clean air, because I think I can win this race.
I'm already getting Jeff telling me to switch strategies, which I'm ignoring.
What's he telling you?
He wants me to do 2 spins on the softs.
But you're in clean air.
Renault sounds wilder, Force India and Williams sound louder than the rest.
That's interesting. I wonder why they sound louder.
But that was in the aim of the regulations as well, though, wasn't it? There was a lot of complaints about the engine sounding garbage, and I know that the technical working group was looking at solutions to make the engines a bit more spectator friendly. I mean, they'll never sound as good as a V8, a V10, or a V12, of course, but anything they can do to sort of improve that, I think, is a worthwhile effort, because they can't really double back now on a commitment to being a bit greener, and it would be stupid to even try to be honest. Because the sport has become so much more dependent on manufacturers in a way that historically it wasn't, because there's far less privateer teams today than there used to be as a proportion of the grid. And with that, I'm not including Toro Rosso or Red Bull as a privateer team. I know they're not strictly an engineering company, but it's a big multinational conglomerate, and it's a marketing exercise for them. I don't see them as they're not a company that exists purely for racing.
No.
And I think, when you're so dependent on manufacturers, you're even more likely to have to cave into what they need, and what they need needs to make business sense. And that is smaller engines that burn less fuel and are cheaper to produce, longer lasting, and just more ethically and environmentally defensible.
Also hires, Mercedes and Williams brakes were red as hell when braking for turn 1. They were really pushing.
I did hear this. Again, Gary Anderson was pointing out that not Bottas. Sorry, I wanted to shout Bottas, and it just came out.
Just wanted to shout.
Grosjean, the perennial brakes man, is having brake problems again, specifically.
Oh.
And he noticed that. Well, what it was described as, actually, in the case of Grosjean, I don't know if this goes for the Haas as a whole, but he's doing what Gary Anderson said that Irvine used to do at Jordan initially.
Brakes were working.
Which is that he's trying to outbrake the car. And he talked about having a conversation with Eddie Irvine in the 90s, and Irvine was saying to him, I can brake later than the car is allowing me. And Anderson said quite smartly that, well, you have to listen to the car.
Yeah.
You have to work within the confines of what you've got, and it seems to him that that's Grosjean's problem as well, that he is naturally a late breaker, which we know to be true because of his rather lengthy period of bidding. That it makes a lot of sense to me, actually, as an explanation, in part for the problems he's been having. I stayed out a lap longer. I'm hoping the running in clear air, even though it's on shitty tyres, has bought me enough breathing room to come out of this stint ahead of the 3 cars I was under the gearbox of.
Well, they're all scrabbling with each other, but they're too far behind me for me. Oh, they've got Perez to overtake. That's why they're all stuck. And Perez is on the softs.
Maybe I can come out in the lead here. I hate this pit entrance again, and fortunately there's nothing for me to destroy the car on, which has become a hallmark. But I still don't like it. I think like the entry angle and the way it sweeps around is completely unnecessary. Oh no, I'm coming out 7th. They've all got past me, but they are very close together, which you'd think. And
Also, I
if you
moved to turn 7, I believe. The last in Sector 2 you could see what cars tried to go flat out and which lifted.
go on then, please do fill us in.
tell us in.
Their Mercedes did it full throttle with mediums the few times.
That's interesting to hear because, again, Gary Anderson was, as I said earlier in the cast, talking about that car washing out in the corners at the front. And it looked a little squirmy to him that it wasn't able to comfortably plant power early on corner exit because it was unstable at the front. But maybe the characteristics of turn 7 masked that a little bit. But it is interesting to hear. Other than the brakes as well, since we're on Haas, if you have any observations about Haas, please do throw them in. Otherwise, I will get us back on course for a moment. It strikes me that we were pretty accurate in our predictions regarding Haas. That nothing to write home about, but they didn't make any major wrong foot steps, which you would expect, to be honest, for a team that is receiving a lot of technical support and service from external partners, and I don't really feel comfortable saying this car is much of an evolution over what they've been fielding previously.
No.
Because, as we talked about last week, for me, only the barge board concept seems to be a radical departure from what we've seen from them before. And I could see them right down at the bottom. So keen to see how that develops, because they've surprised me the last 2 seasons.
But I couldn't hear it so clearly. They were close to do it full throttle. And finally Alonso did it full throttle.
I'm not surprised to hear that about Ferrari though, because that's the one real universal that I'm getting from everybody who's either at testing professionally or for recreation, is that the Ferrari looks like it did last year. Raikkonen, you cheeky rascal. He saw I was coming to overtake him and he moved out and blocked me.
Moose.
I'm so much faster than you. I balls that up as well. I could have got past him and I chickened out. Like a big chicken.
Right, I'm in this lap.
Haas suffered a lot more than the rest with the wet track. The driver seemed so scared of going off.
Well, I understand that, given that the brakes seem to repeatedly try to kill them. And I don't recall seeing any team's cars ruined in wet weather conditions more than the Haas's in recent memory. Were you at the front of that train?
No, Perez was, but I was only about 3 seconds further up the road. So I'm
They
doing.
had very
Get
few
past
laps until
anybody
they
here.
could put slicks.
Yeah, I think my worry with Haas now is that actually I feel more negative about their future, just in general, as well as their ability to do something juicy this year, because the car just looks it. Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean are 2 very aggressive drivers, be it with their actual battling ability or just the way how they handle
Tell
a
Nico
car.
Hulkenberg to suck their balls.
Exactly. Poor Nico, not really. The worry that I have is that if they've got a car that needs to be more fragile or can't deal with stuff like that, then they're going to run into so many problems and they can't push it, and then they've got a car that needs to be more reliable because it's just not able to take the punishment because they don't know it inside out, because they don't run it. Same old. Everyone else is making a step forward. They're going to be treading ground, wondering
After
where
all
it's
I
gone
saw
wrong
in
again.
the tests, I would place Mercedes as the clear, fastest, and Haas as the last of the table.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Haas, I'm worried now that Toro Rosso have proven that they can do
Also,
good.
Sauber didn't seem any fast.
My worry is very much that Haas will be bottom of the table, battling with Sauber.
I'm finding Sauber actually among the teams hard to gauge, but again, I haven't seen them on track.
No.
And you can never tell if they're showing all their hands, but I guess the effect of the Alfa Romeo partnership will...
Haas, Sauber and Toro Rosso to the bottom.
I think that's a reasonable projection.
Yeah.
But I think Toro Rosso will be leading that pack. And I don't know, I get the feeling that Sauber will take a step forward this year simply by virtue of having up-to-date power unit and Ferrari rear suspension components and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it will be next year where the money that they've got in the bank now that they haven't had previously will actually enable them to begin to lift themselves up out of the doldrums.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. This is all about restructuring, about being Ferrari's junior team again.
Yeah, we've talked. Again, we won't retread old ground, but we've talked about this at length before. That is where they belong. That's not a critique of them. It's my favourite team on the grid. I love them.
New sponsors.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing as well. Like
nice.
they had 4 sponsor announcements in the same day, just before testing, which made me very, very happy because I've been worried about that team. And as I was saying, they're my favourite team on the grid. And I
Williams in front
I've
of those
lost.
3, then Renault seems paired with Force India.
That's quite a bold projection, actually. I don't know how that's actually going to pan out. I just don't have enough data to know whether I agree with you or not. I could honestly see Force India at the bottom of that pile.
Maybe initially
if they've really
until
messed
they can,
up.
Yeah, maybe because I don't know if they're going to try and do another year where they do a here's our Mark II car.
I doubt it because they were complaining about having to spend the best part of £1 million on new chassis for the Halo. So I suspect this is the car that they'll be fielding for the entire season.
Worse than McLaren. And Mercedes seems to have more advantage on Ferrari than last year.
That's not something I'm hearing from the technical guys from the magazines, but they're not always right. So I'm going to take you at your word. But what I'm hearing is the McLaren does look good.
Australia are 2 different tracks.
That's true as well. Very different capabilities. Well, I tell you what, Fran and Chimpy, who are the main 2 that have been chipping into that discussion, your comments are now sealed forever on this podcast. So when we go back for our usual review at the end of the year, just to see how terrible our ideas were and thoughts and feelings, you can too feel the wrath of being either amazingly, fantastically on point or in the trash fire with us, usually by the end of it all.
In the recycle bin of life.
Yes.
We should move on, I
Yes.
suppose. Why don't we talk Red Bull? They were pace setters on the first day with Danny Rick.
I hope I have been accurate.
Yeah.
They were pace setters on day one with Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know if
Love and
that was
kisses.
really representative of anything.
Uh-huh.
But I
Thanks, Fran.
do like how the car is looking.
I want the other livery. But yeah, the car looks grounded.
I mean, again though, for me, because they're in that cloud, McLaren, Renault, Red Bull, and I really can't decide in which order I think they're going to come out. But particularly with the lineup they've got, you've got to say they're probably going to do quite well. I just don't have the pace to beat Raikkonen on these tyres. The time differential between the tyres I'm on and the tyres he's on is ridiculous. So I think 5th is probably the best I can hope for, unless me running long here helps. But what I will be keen to see is how well Daniel Ricciardo manages to market himself in the first part of the year.
Yeah.
Because he's beaten Verstappen the last 2 seasons, but a lot of people argue that last season wasn't on merit. I would disagree, because by the end of the season, the reliability difference between them was not particularly vast. In fact, I think they both had the same number of DNFs, if I recall.
Yeah.
However, we already assume that he's sliding into a de facto number 2 driver position, even if Red Bull won't admit it, and that it's probably right for him to move on, and that the decision he makes next will be integral to deciding the course of his career. He's going to have to really work hard. We saw at the end of last season, Max started to find the racecraft that you and I had always kind of criticised him for not having. That, you know, he's a very exciting talent, he's super fast, he's very capable, but he was just too impatient, and he didn't seem to have the marathon mentality.
Yeah.
This year, I don't think Max is going to believe his own hype quite so much somehow, and I think he'll come into the season maybe a little bit less. I don't want to use the term arrogant, but I will. I think he might come in with a little bit more humility.
Yeah.
And feel that actually I do have to work hard to beat Danny Rick. And I think if he has that mentality and follows up on it, I think he probably might. And that puts Ricciardo in a difficult position. Because as we talk about very often, in Formula One, you're only as good as your last hit. I think the exception that proves the rule would be Alonso, because his reputation has stood the test of time, despite all the bad moves he's made in his career and all the dismal cars he's been sat in.
But he's always been able to still be the team leader in spite of everything that he's gone along. So when you put him up against his rival, which is always your teammate first and foremost, he comes out on top each time. So I think that's what survived it.
And I actually think that will be the driver relationship that's probably going to be most interesting to watch season long, simply because of what's at stake regardless of the decision Ricciardo makes.
Yeah.
Because either he has to prove himself as the number 1 driver in reality, no matter what they've promised Max, or he has to stamp his authority on at least a level that gets him a competitive ride somewhere else.
Yeah.
I still think moving to Mercedes would be a bad call for him. I stand by that analysis.
In 2017 by 2 points.
I wouldn't read into points necessarily for that battle, but I see where you're coming from.
I see the point, but it's the same logic that's always used to batter Merrickson over the head, and it's not always reflective of comparative pace or performance over the duration of the season, because sometimes great drives aren't actually rewarded with points. You're driving within the limits of the car and the team.
Especially with that car blowing up all the time, that McLaren. So, it makes sense.
Based on what we've read and seen so far, and what's been going on in testing, I do want to ask you.
Nearly killed me and a few marshals on turn 3. He made a correction flat out at nearly 280 kV.
Oh, Waffle, you naughty boy. I am glad no one was hurt though. I want to ask you if you reckon, Si, that Bottas will lift his head up this year.
In comparison to 2017, yes. So long as he gets out of his self-harm mentality, then yes. But I think it will be very, very, very much down to how the early races pan for him, because he's a snowball driver. That sounds gross, but I know what I mean. So I didn't mean it to sound like that when I said it. So if you have, oh, go away, Hamilton. If you have, oh, he just drove into me on the straight. What a little shitbag. What was I going to say? Yeah, so he's an emotional snowball. So if he gets beating up on himself and starts being, oh, woe is me, sadness, sadness, end of world, then he'll fall away, and then he will not be in the Mercedes team for 2019. But that will need to be coming out all guns blazing, and I don't know, maybe if he gets the win in Australia, and can then like have a platform to go on, then I think he'll be a force to be reckoned with potentially. If he ends up 5th on the grid, 6th in the race in Melbourne, I think we could pretty much wave goodbye to bye bye Bottas.
I've long been a defender of Bottas. Oh shit, I nearly lost it there. I've long been a defender of him. I thought his stint at Williams showed some real flashes actually, and I kind of saw him as a Mika Hakkinen figure. That like one day he's going to come really good, and you're going to be annoyed with him because he's going to be in the newspaper every day because he's been winning races. But in reality, I can't actually now conceive of a situation where he comes out of this season with his drive. Because
you're in.
I honestly think the damage has been done.
Williams' garage. He gave a handshake to half of their mechanics. Lol.
Oh, okay.
Can I come back now, please?
Miss you, Frank.
Well, actually, if Stroll doesn't pick it up, that could be a door that opens for him.
Oh yes.
They could open the door quite readily for him, I think, because I believe he is a popular figure in the team, and it's interesting that I would say he's what's missing from the Williams team this year. I think I'd feel a lot more confident about them if they had Bottas, and this was something they were talking about when they brought Massa back, right? That ideally for them they would rather have Bottas, but they didn't want to hold his career back, and the money doesn't hurt. But Bottas apparently was.
I think Claire Williams has a soft spot for Stroll, though.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? It's funny actually that you pick up on that too, because I was thinking the same thing.
Really?
The thing is that also though I am a defender of Stroll somewhat outspokenly, simply because of his junior Formula record, and I think it's it's
too early to write him off, isn't it?
Yeah, it's far too early to judge him only as a pay driver or as a guy who isn't fit for Formula 1 and he's only there because of the money, because I think any team would have considered him based on his junior Formula record. And I don't think, while he does bring money, I don't think his dad wields the kind of authority within the team that a lot of people claim that he does, with no evidence to back it up. I really don't think that's the case. I think if it had have been the case, I think very likely you would have seen Kubica get the race seat.
Yeah, because then as a guy
He's
who's slower, no threat, and he'll be in retirement again in 2 years' time.
Yeah, exactly. I think if Stroll was pulling the strings in that team, Kubica would be in the race car. Yeah. As it stands, I think he really has to watch his back with Sirotkin. Renault rate him very, very highly. And again, I think Sirotkin would be in the Renault today if Sainz hadn't been released from Toro Rosso.
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that's the case. Also, Sirotkin's had a lot of years on the sidelines where he hasn't actually been out of Formula 1. He's constantly been a reserve or a tester at one team or another. I think he's going to prove to be quite formidable, at least for Stroll to contend with. And Stroll has to do better this year than last year. So when I say I defend Stroll, I'm not saying that his season last year was acceptable. I'm just saying that it's a lot of pressure for someone that young, and we can't judge him by the measuring stick of Max Verstappen, because Verstappen is a once in a generation talent.
Yeah.
Just like Hamilton was.
If
Most
you-
drivers who come up from.
Oh, sorry, I
Go
was
on.
just going to say.
I feel like I've tread on your toes there with the Hamilton remark, and you're going to slap me down.
No. Well, yes for that. But no, I was going to say, remember 2000, Jenson Button, up and down the grid, not qualifying properly, all kinds of inconsistent results. But look at what came out of that. He just,
Yeah.
I felt like he came in a year too early, but he still showed that raw talent. That kept him around, and I feel like Stroll will do something very, very similar, so long as he can calm himself. Calm down.
No, I agree. Stroll is someone that I could see being in F1 for the duration, if he can find something of his junior career. And I don't know if it's nerves, inexperience, if the formula was a problem. I mean, what I found interesting actually was, for a long time we'd assumed that Massa was having input on his career, but he said when talking to the media that he doesn't know why people think that, because Massa actually didn't do anything for him. I don't know if that's him being an ungrateful little shit or if it's actually true. Although, to be honest, if I was him, I'd be very quick to point the finger at Massa for his performances, rather than saying, "Oh no, that was all me," because again, that's like serving up a shit on a plate, pointing to it and go, "That's all me. I made that." And it's like, no. You don't want to look at that with any pride. He had flashes of pace. He had a great run in Azerbaijan, but in general, he was far too mercurial throughout the season, and part of that will be the car, because we know they had a temperamental car that was compromised in many areas previously, because they found speed in a slippery car, which doesn't translate well to more technical tracks. But last year's car, I think, was the worst they've produced since 2013.
Yeah, it was a dog. Not a fan. Similarly, I think it'd be very interesting to see Charles Leclerc in the Sauber. People already making jokes. This is why I'm really, really pleased that F1 TV will also provide Formula 2 and GP3, as well as Porsche Super Cup, in that people can be a bit more educated about what they say about people with junior Formulae, because Charles Leclerc spun it on his first day in testing in the Sauber. Since you're like, "Oh, it's Giovinazzi," no. And I just think, oh, come on, people. I know, like, we have better viewership than that, but it just kind of makes me think, oh, you can't. You need to look at people's history and understand like a much fuller picture as to why people are where they are today, and who they've raced up against, who they've beaten, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to it.
I think that's one of the things, though, isn't it? Because it's quite difficult for someone to tune into a race and leave with a fair understanding of the actual performance relative to the car and so on of each driver up and down the grid, because there's a lot of guys.
For a rookie, though in the test as well.
I really rate him. I think he's something special, but it doesn't always translate to Formula One. So he still has to prove himself. It's not like it's a given for me that he is going to be amazing, guaranteed. But I believe he's got more potential than a lot of rookies, and he has been prodigious in his career thus far. And I think, honestly, this is the breath of fresh air Sauber need, along with the Alfa Romeo deal. What I'm interested to see is what happens with the giant killer in the garage opposite.
You first up.
Because
What do you mean, giant killer?
Ericsson.
Ericsson. Yeah.
Because people forget actually how highly rated Felipe Nasr was. Like, a few years ago, how many years ago was it Nasr was in? Was it 3?
Yeah, 2015.
About 4 or 5 years ago, if you were like really into your motorsport and you were listening to the podcast about Junior Formula and everything, Felipe Nasr had a very good reputation. I heard a lot about him in like the 2 years prior to him debuting with Sauber. And his first race, if you recall, for Sauber, he actually picked up points and had a really good run.
Yeah, it was fifth, wasn't
and
he?
I sort of felt very vindicated in my high opinion of him. And then Merrickson just sort of dissolved him over the course of the season, just through attrition. And again, people are really quick to bash Merrickson, right? But when you look at his performance compared to Wehrlein, which is the biggest head he's taken thus far, you either have to look at their relative performance and say Wehrlein underachieved and Merrickson is crap, which means Wehrlein really underachieved.
Yep.
Or Merrickson is a lot better than people give him credit for. And I've said it before, I'm in column B there. I actually think he's never going to be world champion, but I think he's handy enough.
He's
I
a
think
grower,
he's
not
of
a shower.
sufficient. Yeah, he is of sufficient quality to make up the numbers.
Oh yeah.
And I'm interested if he can have another season where he's within a really narrow bracket of Leclerc in qualifying. Like if he can come out of this season with again the tightest qualifying differential on the grid, then suddenly he's going to come out of this smelling even sweeter. Because that alone was staggering for me last year, because I really rated Wehrlein. I never liked him very much, but I rated him super highly.
Yeah.
And particularly at the end of the season, Merrickson was beating him in qualifying, sometimes quite convincingly so. I really grew to like Ericsson over the course of the year, and I really want to see how that team battle develops. I don't necessarily believe in my heart of hearts it's going to be especially close, and I think there's other driver pairings that we'll probably all watch more closely. But still, come the midpoint in the season, I will find myself looking up exactly how the numbers break down, because it's very easy to lose the detailed picture over the course of the season. And sometimes you can come away from a season thinking, teammate A beat teammate A decisively. But when you look at all the metrics and statistics put together, you find that the gap is tiny. It's like you and I always talk about Verstappen versus Sainz.
Yeah.
And if particularly less so with the fans because they're a bit more educated, but the media, if you took the media opinion only, you would think in that season that Verstappen destroyed Sainz, and it just isn't true. And what I'm keen to see actually is if Danny Rick moves on, if Red Bull recall Sainz from Renault, where I think he wants to be, and I think it's a team that will get the best out of him, if they'll drag him back kicking and screaming into Dr. Helmut Marko's fuck bunker to team with Verstappen again. Because things got really heated at Toro Rosso, and I don't think you can trust Sainz to be a good number 2 driver.
No, because it's going to be Vettel and Webber all over again. But
Yeah.
I think possibly worse, because you've got two people at the start of their career as opposed to Webber, who, not that he was already an established member of society in Formula One, and you knew who he was, and he commanded and expected that respect. And so when it wasn't shown, then he just gets pissy and throwing shrimps on Barbies. Whereas if you had those two together, they're both still in their infancy of their careers, so to speak, even though they've both been around now for several years. They're still young whippersnappers. And I don't think Go for it.
Sorry to cut you off, but I also think their performance is closer together than Vettel and Webber's was.
Agreed. And I just don't... I think they both want... They not necessarily want it more, but they're both prepared to not give the other one respect because of previous issues.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know if I was Christian Horner what I would do in this situation, because I genuinely stand by my words here. I think it's not just a case of Sainz having the attitude that he won't play number 2 to Verstappen, but he also has the pace to back it up.
Yeah.
And if he decides to go into a race and race for position, he will and he can. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing to have on your hands. It's great for the fans, But we saw it with Force India last year. We saw it the years before with Mercedes, and before that we saw it with Red Bull, with Webber and Vettel, where it doesn't just get really acrimonious and start bringing division into the team between the two sides of the garage, but quite often it results in double DNFs and dropping a lot of points. And Red Bull are still trying to find their feet again after a period of dominance, and they might be switching to Honda power as well. They've got a disruptive few years ahead that could turn out to be great for them, or it could turn out to push them further down the grid. It all depends how they adapt to the next formula and how this Aston deal develops.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the argument for having two of the best drivers you can get your hands on is as strong as it should be, when the counter argument is these guys are very fiery with each other and they may end up costing you more points than they potentially would earn.
Yeah. Agreed.
And honestly, I think Renault is a natural home for Sainz. And I think Sainz and Hulkenberg could go on to be a team for a few years. I mean, Hulkenberg's got a handful of years left. He's probably going to be around for another 4 or 5 years, but I think he'll eventually move on from Renault. Probably further down the grid, actually, I'm sad to say, unless he starts winning races out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But Sainz is a natural heir apparent for me. And I don't think he can be a number 2 for much longer in his career, actually.
No, I'd also, from a financial point of view, is keep Sainz on a Red Bull contract hired out to Renault so that they can at least make some money and then recoup some of the Verstappen cost.
Mm-hmm.
That would be another way to look at it. Whilst they continue searching for some more junior drivers, because they do have that blip, don't they, slightly in between.
They do. It keeps happening to them. They have a great driver development program that produces some amazing talent, but they can
all in the same year
have this hiccup.
Yeah. It's like buses; they come all at once. Well, that was a good race from you. Impressives.
Well, I'm not too happy because I finished where I started, and I kept losing pace in weird places. So I'd catch up to the cars in front and then wash all my speed off in a corner and they disappear. And I honestly feel that if I drove a little cleaner, I had the pace to win the race. I mean, I set the fastest lap by half a second. To be fair, track evolution would have helped with that, but I think I could have done better. But I am happy, and it's good that I'm finding my race form again. I'd hoped to actually had a bit closer racing, you and me, because of our different pit strategies. I thought it could have produced something interesting, and we were not a million miles apart, but
no, I didn't have the pace.
It seemed to never
all.
Quite happen.
No, I didn't have the pace. I'd gone to move because I saw that you had a slower start, and then I went to the pit lane and basically got interlocked wheels with Verstappen, so I ended up going into turn 1 about 14th. To untangle that, because I didn't realise we were tangled until I was facing the pit wall halfway. I was like, not now. So yeah, recovery, and then I simply did not have the pace to race you there. So no, you had that one fair and square, mate.
Well, thank you, sir. In general, though, happy with how the season's going. I think third in the constructors is ours, definitively.
Oh yeah.
There's a 20-point gap between us now, which makes me a little sad because technically you and I should be 5 points ahead of me because you got a win that you weren't credited for.
Yes, the Chinese Grand Prix that doesn't apparently exist.
Doesn't exist.
But we shall see. We shall see. There's some tracks towards the end that I'm comfortable with. We're starting to get into tracks where I've not raced you online with for a few years, so I'm interested to see where our comparisons are between each other.
I know Suzuka. We'd historically been very close.
Yes.
That's always provided the closest racing between us.
Absolutely. And I've noticed this year actually, particularly as we've gone through, and I think this is because I jump between games. I am so much more aggressive on the tyres because I've played so much Gran Turismo Sport, where you just have to hulk the massive cars round, and it takes me ages to kind of work that back out again. I can't do it.
I had to stop playing that game for the exact reason you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I didn't want it to mess up my podcast form, but genuinely, because that is a game that I really like, but there is no subtlety to the braking. There's no art to it.
No.
Like here, you feather the brakes and try and be easy on your tires, right? And
Yeah.
you get a real benefit from being very light on your steering, and it's something that I've really been working on. It seems to be paying off, particularly last round where my tyre wear was like 45% of yours.
Yeah, yours was amazing there.
And I think it worked quite well this time. I got an extra lap out of my first two sets, and I could have gone further actually on the softs, but I decided, looking at the pace differential on the cars behind, it was better to pit and get onto a faster tyre and see if I could claw something back, and I did.
Woo.
Well, thank you to everyone who joined us. I believe this is our highest viewership to date. I had 5 over here at one point.
I think we was up to 7 or 8 here, so that's all good. And
Yeah, since we went to a live format, that's
probably
a
our
pretty good
peak.
turnout.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, don't forget you can catch us up historically over on the Failcast F1 on YouTube, where we store all of our stuff afterwards. And we normally broadcast on a Saturday. So if you don't are able to join us every fortnight on a Saturday, you can still catch us up on YouTube, where the things are saved anyway. Where now because we're off week, aren't we? Because I'm at Stag Do next week, which is normally when this stuff will be done. So there won't be one next week, and we'll keep in touch about what's going to happen for if it's going to be the week after, or if we double skip and then get us back on the normal schedule, because we'll need to work it out so that we do it, or we're going to try and work it out so that we do it when there's not a race on, so that we have a race to talk about.
Exactly, and also the problem is that we've been far more consistent than we've been historically, and we're actually almost through the season. So maybe we take a brief hiatus, come back when the season starts, and get onto a schedule that means we're not conflicting with real Formula One race weekends. I think that would be good.
Yeah, that'd be grand. So, as always, thank you so much, Mr. Esteban. Any news or anything that you've got going on your channel?
Absolutely nothing. I've got a 6-pack of Heineken in my fridge, so that's what's going to happen now.
Nice. Good stuff. Well, I'm going to go off and help.
How about you? What are you kicking around this week?
I am organising, sorting out some stag do's. I've not been on stag do for ages, so I'm preparing lots of alcohol for that. And we're doing karting, so actual racing. And then there's a place in Milton Keynes called Simply Race, and it is an entire place dedicated to sim racing. And you pay a flat fee and you go in and you choose which rigs and games you want to play on and go around and do. And I've never been, so I'm really excited to try that out. So I'm going to take some video footage of that as it goes along, and I'll pop it up on the channel just in case people want to see what this kind of stuff is about.
I was going to say, I think I speak for all of us when I say we want some Smithy Cam onboard footage of you karting.
Oh dear.
I really want to see that.
There'll be half arses dragging across the floor. That's the problem. So yeah.
Anyway, mate.
Thank you, everyone.
As always. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Take care.
Bye. Love you. Bye.
And I hadn't even pressed goodbye yet. There we go.